Miracles are one of those things that sits right at the divide between believers and skeptics.
Johnny, say Johnny, could you help me with this Catholic Christian claiming miracles are possible?
Oh, I don't think I can, Furlock. I'm sorry. I got this pool tournament coming up here, and I'm missing to the right so bad. Why don't you get a hold of that bear atheist?
Oh, very well. I guess I'll get started debunking these claims myself. Good luck in the tournament, Johnny.
For Christians, they're evidence of God's glory. For atheists, they are fairy tale magic for people that never grew up. And there's this ceaseless rebuke from atheists that is recited so frequently that it's hard to associate it with anything resembling free thinking. It's the audacious claim that there is no evidence for God.
Ah, so you are saying that if you presented actual evidence for the existence of a God, that an atheist would not change their mind and still not believe a God exists? Bollocks! This is completely backwards from my perspective. I ask you, Christian, if you were to have good evidence that your God is only a myth, would you change your mind? I'm not sure I've met a devout believer that even admitted such a thing. The ancient texts you cling to try to build up one's bias to close your mind to any reason or evidence. Then to top it off, you compartmentalize our words as absurd nonsense, or throw accusations that demons, which not only have you failed to show evidence of their existence, you don't even give a definition that allows me to conceptualize anything at all. So how do these demons blind us? What are demons made of? To affect us, they would have to have a physical presence in this universe that we could measure. But we haven't measured any matter or energy to show that this is the case. But in your mind, you think that we should be ignored, so you can cling to this faith, your book, without having to feel uncomfortable in your ignorance. I'm afraid most theists I have met are the definition of closed-minded tribal think as well.
While there are plenty of logical arguments that can be offered as evidence,
26 seconds into this video and you make a demonstrably wrong statement. First, you must understand that there isn't a logical argument, and there never will be a logical argument that can be used as evidence. The only thing theists have ever put forward is a formal argument. It's a part of philosophy. Science could give a crap less, and we could give a crap less. You recite an argument for a mountain and point at a mountain. I have reason to believe there is a mountain because I see a mountain. Now, if you recite an argument for a mountain and point at an empty field, I would laugh at you. If I would recite the same argument, people would laugh at me. This is how it has always been. Do you now see how useless formal arguments are? Show us a mountain, and that is evidence, not this invisible, immeasurable being that even most theists can't hear or see. Maybe even the ones that claim they can. Yes, I will even go as far to say that none of you have seen or heard this being. At least, the evidence I am gathering points to an imaginary made-up creature.
I think that miracles are the most convincing, and Jesus seems to agree with that. There aren't any passages in the Bible where Jesus goes around reciting the ontological or the cosmological arguments for the existence of God. Instead, we see him showing people who he is by what he's able to do: heal the sick, raise the dead, feed crowds of people with small portions of food.
Our lesson this evening is taken from the Gospel according to St. John, chapter 2, beginning at the first verse.
Oh dear. Could you show me one of these healthy people so I may see if his health miraculously improved? I'd also like to examine these dead. Are you sure their primitive medical procedures maybe missed something? Like they maybe really weren't dead and just mortally wounded, as we have evidence for with current medical knowledge?
And when the steward of the feast did taste of the water from the pots, it had become wine.
Maybe we could look at this basket used to feed the many and make sure there isn't a sleight of hand going on to fool the crowd of people to give up more of their tithers.
And it came to pass that all the wine was drunk.
It wouldn't be impossible for illusionists to do such a trick now, would it?
It had become wine, and he knew not whence it had come. But the servants did know.
But for a lot of atheists, miracles have been prejudged to be impossible and therefore inadmissible as evidence.
And they said unto the Lord, how the hell did you do that? And inquired of him, do you do children's parties?
It's very simple. We don't have any evidence of these things or even consistent historical documents to help confirm the argument. I think I need to get a hold of Mr. Bear Atheist so I can check my blood pressure. He has a better grasp on the Catholic miracles than I do.
And so he brought forth a carrot and said, behold this, for it is a carrot. And all about him knew that it was so, for it was orange.
So I thought we'd take a look at how logically consistent that position is on the question of miracles.
Hello, Mr. Bear Atheist. Can you please help?
Mr. Furlock, sir. Top of the morning to you, and thank you for getting in touch. Hopefully, we can get your blood pressure to a normal 120/80. Atheists see miracles, that is, non-natural phenomena attributed to a supernatural being, as fairy tale magic because miracles have never stood up to scrutiny and are only ever proclaimed as miracles by the Catholic Church after the fact. To say miracles are prejudged by atheists to be impossible and therefore inadmissible as evidence is a strange statement, as Catholics, conversely, prejudge so-called miracles to be real, despite all evidence to the contrary. For example, 14-year-old Bernadette Soubirous claimed to have spoken to Mary at Lourdes in 1858. At first, Bernadette didn't recognize the figure as Mary, and only Bernadette could see or hear Mary. Bernadette claimed Mary wore clothes similar to the uniform of a religious group Bernadette was too poor to join. Her visions were met with speculation, not only from the local priest, but also the Catholic Church at the time. It wasn't until the church faced nationwide questions did they finally declare the visions a miracle in 1860. When experts analysed Bernadette's report, they say the apparition was highly likely to be a parental figure, though not a natural parent in her life. Further, after examining Bernadette's childhood experiences, it's highly likely her apparition was an attempt to gratify an unconscious desire associated with that parental figure. Despite all subsequent healing claims to be short-term or hoaxes, and despite repeated testing confirming the water at Lourdes hold no healing properties, millions of Catholics swarm there every season, believing the subjective visions of a 14-year-old girl from 160 years ago were evidence for God's glory.
So back to this topic of miracles. I think it's important for us to start by defining what Christians mean by miracles. So miracles are signs and wonders that reveal God's supernatural glory to our senses.
Or, to be more exact, the Catholic Church uses certain terms to categorize miracles. For example, they believe the bodies of saints are incorruptible, that is, they never decay. As evidence, the Church points to the 130-year-old remains of Bernadette Soubirous, the very girl who saw visions of Mary at Lourdes prior to her canonization as a saint. A light wax mask and new wax hands were created to maintain the illusion of incorruptibility, therefore maintaining the illusion of a miracle. Another category is the miracle of stigmata, where the wounds of Jesus at his crucifixion appear on people. This happened to Therese Newman during the 1920s. Whilst claiming she bled from her wounds, no one witnessed actual bleeding. And in 1928, Professor Martini, director of the University Hospital Bonn, found her behaviour suspicious, as blood would only appear when he was asked to leave the room. These are just two examples where something seemingly unexplainable can be easily verified by facts and an application of healthy skepticism.
Because we have this ability to observe and draw conclusions about the way things are or the laws that govern the natural world. And science is our crowning achievement in making and interpreting those observations.
And this is exactly how the so-called miracles of incorruptible bodies of saints and the stigmata have been debunked and demonstrably proven to be false.
When we define a natural law through something like science, what we're actually saying is that under certain circumstances, this is what always happens. So for example, when we define a law like gravity, we're saying that this is how two objects with mass always behave in proximity to each other. A miracle is what happens when something occurs in a manner that doesn't conform to those natural laws. In other words, it doesn't happen in the way that we always observe it. And since it doesn't, in the eyes of science, it's an anomaly and therefore unexplained by science. If science could explain it, then it wouldn't be a miracle. So asking for scientific evidence of a miracle is asking for a contradiction.
No, having scientific evidence debunks so-called miracles, and therefore the Church hopes Catholics will blindly believe the claims of miracles to perpetuate the ideologies of the Catholic Church.
And some people look at that and say, well, then miracles are impossible because things always behave according to the laws of nature. Well, the audacity of that statement is staggering, and I think it reveals a really unscientific way of looking at the world, because scientific inquiry has always been motivated by a desire to reach for the unknown.
And hence the varied reasons behind these so-called miracles. Post-traumatic stress, expressed in unconscious self-mutilation through abnormal autosuggestibility, wax body parts, the bleaching of photosensitive retinal cells from staring at the sun, predisposed religious belief, societal fears and mass hysteria, condensation, wax or paint, posthumous records and gross exaggeration.
But if you begin that inquiry by defining what is or isn't possible based on your existing limited range of knowledge, then you'd never bother trying to discover anything. So I'd like to invite you to consider the rest of what I have to say without prejudging what is or isn't possible. So getting back to this definition of miracles, you could say that a miracle is by definition something that we don't understand.
And what's been demonstrated here is that it's a miracle the Catholic Church has the nerve to claim explainable events as miracles in the first place.
Again, it's an anomaly. It's evidence that the person who caused it, say someone like Jesus, has a knowledge or an ability that exceeds human understanding. And this creates a massive problem for people who say that there needs to be proof of a miraculous claim before they'll believe it. Because proof by definition is something that we understand. If you're giving evidence to somebody in order to prove something to them, if that evidence is beyond their understanding,
then endeavour to explore why that person doesn't understand the evidence, instead of washing your hands of all responsibility and scientific curiosity and say, I don't understand it, therefore, God.
Then you haven't proven anything to them. You've just told them something that is true, and they can either accept that or not accept it based on whether they believe you or not, which is a question of faith.
Again, no. The default position is to merely examine evidence presented outside known scientific axioms. Believing an established fact, evidence, albeit unknown evidence, existing, is a moot point.
Stanley, see this? This is this. This ain't something else. This is this.
Like when my 3-year-old daughter asked me why there were bubbles in her soda water, my explanation about how carbon dioxide can be dissolved in liquid when it's pressurized isn't an example of me having proven it to her, because that explanation didn't make any sense to her.
Well, it certainly wasn't God who made the bubbles, nor was it a miracle. So establishing the facts of the evidence within known axioms is not only the best answer, it's the truth.
So here, I'm going to show you some, and you're going to tell us what this is. What is that?
Germanium.
Geranium.
Chlorine.
Chlorine. And this is?
Swamps and fireworks to make them wet, and also doing the dark paint.
What is this?
Phosphorus.
Phosphorus. They all look alike to me. I don't know what... And what is phosphorus? Tell me about that.
It's a chameleon.
It is a chameleon. Why is that?
And that means it could be different colors.
That's
like
right.
Black or white. When it's white, it catches fire in the air and also burn underwater.
It burns underwater.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. It is crazy. And this is?
Tantium. It's found in the limit of the Republic of the Tondo in Africa. And if you have a map, I could show you.
I still wouldn't know what is... How do you remember? You're 3 years old. How do you remember all this?
My new brain just remembers.
So if a proof by definition is something that you can understand, and a miracle by definition is something that you cannot understand, to ask for proof of a miracle is to ask someone to make you understand something that you cannot understand, which is a logical contradiction.
If a supernatural being that created a cosmos can't do something miraculous that the people of the world in 2020 could not only document, but unilaterally understand and agree is a genuine unexplained experience, then this being either lacks imagination, is malevolent and chooses not to provide evidence, or doesn't exist at all. Look, I'm spitballing here. Maybe this deity could write, "I am Yahweh" in giant flames in all languages and keep it in the sky for a week. I guarantee you no one will be able to explain that.
So to insist that a proof for God conform to a self-contradictory criteria is a pretty good way of staying stuck in your own feedback loop. And it demonstrates for me an unwillingness to actually be open to the only kind of evidence that could be offered.
Oh, the irony. The sweet, sweet irony.
So what I'm saying is, don't ask for evidence under some pretense that you'd actually be open to it when it's presented, and then when it is, retreat into a logical fallacy as some kind of defense against it.
You need to, firstly, present evidence outside of the agreed scientific axioms. For example, show me a levitating horse. Show me a perpetual motion machine. Even then, because it doesn't conform to the known axioms of science, perhaps it's something new, something that hasn't been discovered yet, something exciting. It's not just a matter of looking at a levitating horse and saying, well, God.
So if you can accept the possibility that miracles do occur, that isn't necessarily evidence that they actually do occur. And in fact, if you've never seen one, just as you've never seen a flying orangutan, that could reinforce the belief that they don't exist. But what if there are thousands of documented cases in which people have witnessed a miracle?
Yes, they're filed next to the thousands of UFO accounts which have strangely diminished in relation to the development of high-definition phone cameras.
Well, I'd say that's pretty powerful evidence. And again, unless you're content with contradictions, you need to resist the temptation to retreat back into the insistence for proof, because eyewitness accounts are the only kind of proof that can be offered here.
However, just as an FYI, eyewitness accounts remain the #1 contributing factor to wrongful convictions in the criminal justice system.
Now, I can provide lots of examples of miracles, but for the sake of time, I'm going to just highlight the process by which people are declared saints in the Catholic Church. Now, you may or may not know this, but in order to be declared as a saint, there needs to be miracles attributed to the person in question. Now, without knowing much about how this process works, it's probably easy to look at it and just be dismissive of it. But if you actually learn about how the church how they approach this process, you'll discover that they're actually very skeptical in the way that they investigate these miracles.
Unfortunately, the footage shown here relates to the canonization of Father Joseph Mosquez, who didn't perform any miracles. This is not a board of doctors. This has nothing to do with the context of what you're saying.
It says here the cardinal, if he wishes, may say something. He wishes.
They look for any natural explanation that could be possible first, even consulting scientists and medical experts. And in the event that no natural explanation can be offered, then they start to favor a miraculous explanation. And scientific scrutiny of the supposed miracles is usually readily available, because most of the miracles that they look at are healings of people that were being closely monitored under medical care. And so what the church does is that they will ask the attending doctors if there's any possible natural explanation, like the medical treatment that they were getting for the healing. And if the doctor says that there was no medical or natural explanation, then they start to look at a supernatural explanation.
This overlooks medical explanations such as regressed tumours, cellular suicide, and misdiagnosis. Hey, Po body's no effect.
People want me to do everything for them, when what they don't realize is they have the power. You want to see a miracle, son? Be the miracle.
So, back to you, Furlock. After all this, I really hope this has eased your blood pressure somewhat.
So with an understanding of this very open and transparent process, we should be able to get an idea of the scope of how many well-documented miracles there are out there. And that, for me, is a commanding rebuke of the claim that there is no evidence for the existence of God or miracles.
Well, thank you, Mr. Bear Atheist. I think we've done our job here. It was a pleasure doing collaboration with someone halfway around the globe. Iron Johnny, thank you. I think Johnny's going to do good in the tournament now that he's got some practice in anyway. Cheers!
And Jesus did hearken unto their words, and he did go unto Jerusalem, and he did his full act before the scribes and the Pharisees and the Romans. But alas, it did not please them in their hearts. In fact, they absolutely crucified him. Here ends the lesson.